Hello, I'm Taylour Tedder, City Manager for Boulder City, and welcome to the latest episode of Tedder Talks, a once-a-month look at issues and people impacting Boulder City. Joining me today is Boulder City Chief Will Gray. Welcome, Chief Gray.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about you, where you're from, where you've worked, some of your background, and your family?
Sure. So I'm originally from Colorado. I spent 26 years with the Pueblo Fire Department, retired as an assistant chief in 2020, and came out here with my wife. Here I have my wife and 3 dogs. Back home I have 2 kids and 5.5 grandkids. I got 1 on the way.
That's great. So what brought you to Boulder City? What really drew you in?
So as I was nearing the end of my career there in Colorado, I was looking for a smaller town. I like the small town idea where I can go out and have coffee and know people that are there and have a little bit smaller department where you can get to know the members a little bit better. Where I came from was a much larger department. It was kind of hard to have some of those personal relationships. So here it allows me to really get to know the members and their spouses and their families, and so it's a good setting.
And your department makes some good food.
They do that.
That drew me in.
Most of them.
So you started in early 2020, and your first 2 years were really about responding to COVID and the entire pandemic. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as a new fire chief, it's challenging anyway. I came into a department that had some work that needed to be done, so we began that. And about 4 to 6 weeks after I showed up is when the pandemic started. And so, yeah, it was quite a challenge. At times, the needs outpaced our resources, but Boulder City's got such a good community that we were able to bring a lot of volunteers in and to really run all the different processes we have, from standing up our EOC to our vaccination effort, which was supported by community members in the hospital across the street as well, to our vaccination effort where we had people from all different departments coming in there. And so we were able to operate like a much bigger department. And so.
Yeah, and when I came in, you were still doing testing daily at the fire department, and we'd continued that just until
February of this year.
Maybe first quarter this year.
Yeah, so we did vaccinations for about 6 months, and then throughout the second half of last year and the very beginning of this year, we were continuing to vaccinate shut-ins and helping at the Veterans Home. And then as far as the testing goes, we did testing for most of the pandemic. As soon as tests were available, we had testing efforts, and they really fluctuated based on demand. If the community wanted them, we had long lines, we would do them as long as needed. But as the demand went down a little bit, then that's what really finally shut it down.
Yeah, well, it was very helpful, and I know people were really appreciative of that.
It was, yeah, the firefighters did an amazing job. I was pretty proud of them.
So throughout the whole pandemic EOC process, you really developed the department quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you're most proud of?
I think of the firefighters. So they're going through a lot of change. Whenever you see an administration, just a chief leave, it's a big change. And in this situation, the top 3 people left. And so they got a whole brand new perspective that they had to manage. They had the pandemic they had to manage. And then we had to go through every aspect of the fire department and begin to rebuild where it wasn't right and to make some tweaks and changes. So they've undergone a lot of changes and have been very resilient and very open-minded. And then the service they deliver on a daily basis is consistent. I regularly get phone calls from the community saying how wonderful the firefighters were. And that's something, no matter how stressful it is or how hard things have been for them, they continue to deliver that same high level of service.
So the council approved funds to build a second fire station, a substation. Can you talk a little bit how that came to be?
Sure. When we got here, one of the first things we started to pursue was a community risk assessment. And so some departments in the country just have a standard way of doing business. The more progressive way is to really look at the risks within your specific community and then plan for that. And so when we looked at our risks, one of the things that we identified was that the shape of the town, which is somewhat of a Y shape, had our one fire station a significant distance from about half the town. And so we were seeing response times on the lakeside, down by Lake Mead Estates and Del Prado in the 8-minute time frames. So by adding this new station, we're going to be able to reduce those response times significantly.
And we're able to do the station without hiring any new employees. We'll be able to move one unit there and cover that area for the better response time.
Yeah, and so Obviously, ideal would be to have additional staffing, but we're able to do it with existing staffing for now. And so the thought would be is to take an existing rescue out of one of the stations and move it down. And that'll help with the medical response getting there faster.
So what's next for that plan? What are we looking at with timeline? When will the public start seeing some movement?
Yeah, so City Council approved $1.6 million. Most fire departments in the valley are spending 8 to 11, so we were able to identify a plan that we think we can do for a fraction of that. We've already started the conversation with Public Works on getting drafts, a plan written. As soon as that's done, and that should be pretty quick, it's going to go out to bid. That process, there's a 2-step process that'll take about 8 to 10 weeks. Once that's done, we also have to go through Planning Commission and get the land rezoned, and then it'll come before council. So the hope is, and it seems realistic, that we would see construction begin in January. And in visiting with an architect, he believed that we should be able to be done within 6 months. So We're really hoping that by June of 23 that the station's up and running.
So what else can you tell me about the department, your training efforts, the new AED program?
So among everything else, one of the things that came out of our strategic planning was the need to have community-based AEDs and some CPR programs. And so we reached out to council and got $50,000 in funding to purchase 43 new AEDs. The city already has 25 in city buildings, and so we're going to spread those out throughout city buildings. We're offering free CPR and AED classes to our business community and residents. And so the hope is that when the program is fully implemented, within every 300 feet of the business corridor, there'll be an AED. So if somebody has a medical emergency downtown, and about 18% of the country's heart attacks occur in public.
Oh.
And if you can get an AED on them and good CPR fast, their chance of survival goes up 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
And so our plan really is to try to inundate our business community where all of our workers and visitors come to make it as safe as possible. In addition to that, we're working through international accreditation. There's about 32,000 fire departments in the United States. 300 have obtained this goal. So we're currently being evaluated by 4 fire chiefs from around the country to see if we can meet that standard. And so
I think your department really has a good chance at getting the accreditation.
I feel good about it. We've worked really hard, and we've got a good team reviewing us. So,
yeah, it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. Well, Chief Gray, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me.
Be sure to check out Tedder Talks once a month at bcnv.org/Tedder. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next month for the next Tedder Talks.